Great. Well, welcome everyone. This is our monthly Thursday speaker presentation meeting. And with Zoom, we tend to keep announcements to a minimum. But there's several things that I want members of our chapter to know about. First of all, we are starting back up field trips. And if you are on the field trip list on the server, then you will get email blasts from the field trip leaders inviting you to come to the field trip. Field trips are on a first come, first served basis. And with COVID restrictions, we're at this point limiting them to about 15 participants, which means we give priority to chapter members. If there are remaining spots, then we'll fill those in with friends and family that are not members. But we're encouraging everyone to become a member because it's for as little as $25 for an individual or $35 for a family. You have membership rights for a year. So, and that entitles you to, first of all, obviously coming to the meetings that anyone can come to, but it gets you a newsletter, it gets you our birding notes and our rare bird alerts, and allows you to go on the field trips that we have. So we have two different types of field trips. The longer ones we call monthly trips, and we go to places all around the Bay Area, and it typically is for a full day, led by some great birders. We try to go to places that might have someone that's a specialist in that area, and they will help us lead it. The March trip, we are going to Hamilton Wetlands on March 20th, and we're meeting Marilyn from the nursery at Hamilton Wetlands, and she has spent the last 2 or 3 years working on replanting the salt marshes to try to rejuvenate or replenish the marshes that were levied off and destroyed in the 1850s by farmers, and then later by the Air Force Base at Hamilton Wetlands. She's got a great project, and we'll meet with her. And then after she shares with us what her project is all about, we'll go out onto the levees and bird for the rest of the morning. And then following lunch, we will go to Las Galinas. So that is Saturday, March 20th. Bruce Thompson, did I say his name right? Is the one coordinating that trip. So be on the alert for an email from him. I believe we already have signups for that. Our April trip is led by Robin Leong, who's here in our audience, and really a lifelong member of Napa Solano Audubon. And Robin is going to lead a trip to Mines Road down south of Livermore that goes way out into the chaparral, where they have such notable species as roadrunners and Lawrence's goldfinches, gnatcatchers, and a lot of chaparral birds. And he's also going to visit Robin del Puerto Regional Park and Del Val Regional Park, I think, as well. So it should be a great trip. And if I'll pull up my calendar here just so I don't make a mistake, but that trip is Saturday, April 24th. Saturday, April 24th. We are working on a trip in June to Point Reyes. I should say May to Point Reyes, at the end of May, to try to catch some of the migration at Point Reyes. So that'll be our May trip. In addition, we have what we call weekly walks, and those are led by Andrew Ford, who used to be our college intern that worked with all kinds of things in our chapter. And he's become a really incredible naturalist. And so he leads weekly Saturday walks to different parks in Napa and Solano. And those are posted on the website. Again, during COVID, we feel necessary to limit those to 15 people. So try to sign up with Andrew. He will send out an email to everyone that signed up for field trips the week of the trip. And then it's going to be a first come, first served basis to participate in his trips. Okay, we also have worked hard the last couple weeks in putting together our newsletter. We emailed out the newsletter to email folks earlier today, and we posted it on our website. So I wanted to share my screen for just one quick second. Let's see, share screen. There we go. And share. So I wanted folks to be able to see our website, because it's really, we're doing our best to keep a lot of different things on the website. This talks about the field trips, but over here, there's a button for field trips. And there's also in our calendar, there are all the major trips and information on those trips. Also, over on the left column, there's the newsletter column. So you can click on the current newsletter and click on the button, and boom, up pops our latest newsletter. So I encourage people to go to our website regularly for updates. There's a calendar that tells you about all of our upcoming Zoom meetings. If you click on the event, such as tonight's Zoom meeting, it takes you to a page with more details and a link to the meeting. So that's important to know in case you misplace your emails, how to get into our speaker presentations. So we have 3 more presentations for the year. The April will be Dr. Floyd Hayes, who's presenting on the breeding ecology of grebes from Clear Lake. He's done research there for nearly 10 years or more on the grebes of Clear Lake. And he's got many interesting data and information about how climate change is affecting the grebes at Clear Lake. Our May presentation is actually by Lucas and I, and we are going to be sharing with you our experiences on West Coast pelagic trips. We've gone on pelagic trips all the way from Ventura and Monterey to Half Moon Bay to Bodega and Sausalito. So we've actually taken over 20 pelagic trips during the last 6 years. And so we're excited about sharing our photos and our fun experiences with that with you. So Tom, can you think of anything else for the good of the order?
No, you did good, Mark. Thank you.
One thing I might point out for those of you that live in Napa and want to get a chance to see a fun bird, while I was golfing this morning at the Yountville course, it's called just the Vintners Golf Course. There was a Ross's goose mixed in with the Canada geese at the clubhouse pond. And we've seen one there over the last couple of years. It comes in right about this time. It'll stay a few days and then it'll be gone. But a Ross's goose is a pretty uncommon bird for Napa. So if you're in the Yountville area, stop by the Lakeside Grill or the Vintners Clubhouse. There's a pond right out in front. You can go sit on the patio and enjoy lunch or wine or beer and watch the Ross's goose. Well,
turn on the light, Brittany, if you can't see.
Robin?
I got some breaking news.
All right.
Turn on the light. No, not
Today-
me. You, if you can't see.
Can we should
Anyway, what happened today is we had a Solano Parks and Recreation Commission meeting, and we
Okay.
doled out $12,000 of fine money, and the number one grantee was Napa Solano Audubon. It was Wendy's application for doing some work on the tricolor blackbirds.
Fantastic, fantastic. And for those of you that are new, Wendy Shakowitz was a former president of our chapter, and she's done some really groundbreaking work by placing recording devices in tricolor blackbird colonies and recording the time of the year when nesting begins, when the young hatch and when they fledge. And she now has calendars set up where it's very predictable when that's going to happen based on the calls that are happening in the colony. And that way they can try to keep people from harvesting grain or disturbing the colony until the nestlings have fledged. And she spoke with us last month, and it was a very fascinating trip. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce this evening's guests. We have Mark. Mark, do you pronounce your last name Rauzon? Rauzon?
Rauzon.
Rauzon, there we go. Who has worked all over the world, it seems, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and others in the tropics. And he and Meredith Elliott from Point Blue have been studying the double-crested cormorants in the Bay Area and learning a lot about their breeding behaviors. And a lot of people will look at a cormorant and think it's a trashy bird, but actually they're a very fascinating bird species. And they are going to tell us all about that tonight. Please, Meredith and Mark, tell us more about your background history if you'd like when you take it away. But we're really pleased to have you. These are two very educated and well-known birders in the Bay Area, and we're looking forward to their presentation this evening. There you go.
Thank you very much. We're really pleased to be here. As Mark said, we're advocates for the double-crested cormorant, which doesn't have a lot of friends. And we're out trying to make more friends for the cormies, as we call them. So my name is Mark Rauzon. I live in Oakland, and my colleague Meredith Elliott also lives in Oakland, but I do get out and I do bird around, and I have been fortunate enough to meet your ambassador. That's Mark and Lucas. So these guys, I've run into them in a number of places. Napa Solano Audubon has a great ambassadors there outreaching. Speaking of cormorants, we both, Meredith and I, are wearing our pins, and these, can you see this pin, Mark? Can you give me a thumbs up?
Yes, we can, yes.
This is the eyeball of the gorgeous cormorant. So they are maligned, but as you'll see, they're fascinating. And I swear you'll never go over another Bay Bridge without thinking about double-crested cormorants. So the way we're going to be working tonight is I'll do a set of slides, then Meredith will take over and spell me. My voice is a little rough I'm a geography professor at Laney College. And so I've been lecturing all week. My voice is getting a little hoarse. So I'm also a pelagic bird observer. I started working at the Fish and Wildlife Service in 1975. So I've been on a few pelagic trips too, Mark. So let's start with our first slide here, the Richmond Bridge. Okay, let's go back though. Here's our colleagues. Meredith can introduce herself some more, and our friend Eric Lichtward in the center. He has been with LSA Associates monitoring birds on the Bay Bridge for many years, and we were really gratified to be able to use his vehicle. I want to state up front that most of the data we've collected has been as citizen scientists, even though Meredith is an employee at Point Blue and I'm a research associate. We volunteered our time and took advantage of Eric's work to count cormorants every year because we think it's that important. So our next slide, please.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mark, for that intro. So I'm Meredith Elliott. I'm at Point Blue Conservation Science. I've been doing this work with Mark for 20 plus years now. It's crazy to think about. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and talk about cormorants and how they're using basically man-made structures for nesting habitat. This story, it really is a story about seabirds in an urban environment. We'll be talking tonight about double-crested cormorants in the Bay Area. how they use bay bridges and how we monitor them using the bridges. We're going to talk a little bit about their current population on the bridges, or somewhat current, and what's in store for the future. So this is probably nothing new to any of you. You all know about the double-crested cormorant. This is a colonial nesting seabird found throughout North America. They're continuing to recover from the effects of heavy pesticide use several decades ago, mainly DDT, which has caused eggshell thinning and deformities in some birds. The Western population as of 2009, so that's kind of an old estimate, is approximately 31,000. So this is counting everything west of the Continental Divide. 31,000 breeding pairs or so. And in terms of San Francisco Bay, you can find these birds here year round. They're pretty easy to spot. These are some cormorants hanging out on, this is one of the sisters islands, I think, right, Mark?
It's the brothers.
Oh, it's the brothers, okay. Sorry, I get them confused. But the Brothers Islands on in the North Bay, so not far from the Richmond Bridge. Very popular hangout for them. So the double-crested cormorant in this region was described by Grinnell. Was originally called the Farallon cormorant. There's a nice picture, close-up picture here of a double-crested cormorant in breeding plumage. You can see those nice white plumes coming out and that nice colorful eye, kind of like our pins. Just a really beautiful bird. And while they weren't the main focus of egging activities on the Farallon Islands during the gold rush period, they were impacted by egging activities for sure, as were many other seabirds using the Farallons. So cormorants are piscivores, meaning they eat fish. And because they eat fish, they're often seen as a pest by people, competitors for fish. If you haven't read The Devil's Cormorant by Richard King, we highly recommend it. That's a great book. Kind of talks about cormorant-human interactions all over the world, really. But yes, in this country, they're often seen as a pest, particularly in, again, when we're talking about commercially important species like salmonids in the Pacific Northwest. Salmonids also happen to be a threatened species. So we'll be talking a little bit about efforts that are being made to depredate cormorants in the Pacific Northwest in order to save salmonids. So I love this picture here on the right because this is one of my National Audubon Society calendar that I had, and one was on the double-crested cormorant, and maybe you can't read it, but it says, "Can this immature double-crested cormorant eat a fish nearly half its body length?" And the answer is yes, or at least it will try. A lot of these pictures you'll be seeing in this presentation are from Mark. He's an excellent photographer. I think this one is this a trout that was stocked in one of the local reservoirs here. They also like to eat other invasive species like the yellowfin goby. The yellowfin goby is a species introduced from Asia. So they eat all kinds of fish. We're lucky on some of our boat surveys, which we'll talk about a little later, to see cormorants being fed by their parents, or recently fledged cormorants. So here's here's a couple here that are begging. So, you know, cormorants have to eat their fish whole, and then they kind of like regurgitate for their chicks. So Mark was able to get some great shots of some some recent fledglings being fed by the parents. And it looks terrible. It looks really painful, but that's what they do. And so a lot of the work we'll be talking about tonight has been published in a paper that was put out in 2019 in Marine Ornithology. Mark, myself, and several other co-authors listed there contributed data to this project to kind of understand the Bay Area population over the last 30 plus years. So so yeah, we'll be talking a little bit more about that. You'll notice the last author is Harry Carter, who really started this work several decades ago, and you'll be seeing pictures of him, but he passed away. But we wanted to acknowledge his contribution to this project in our paper. And on to you, Mark.
And you guys might know the Audubon Canyon Ranch, John Kelly. He was out there at the egret nesting site for many years. Yeah, doing the math there, that's 47 years worth of cormorant observations. And I've been doing this since 1988, looking at the San Francisco Bay. And we call it a metapopulation because it appears that, well, for example, on the bridge, we found birds that were banded in the early days by Point Reyes Bird Observatory back in the day, birds that were banded on the Farallones. So when Meredith showed the Farallon cormorant photo, in the early days of San Francisco Bay, when the human population was burgeoning, cormorants did not exist in the bay. Only they did not nest in the bay. They only nested on the Farallones. And so what we say is a metapopulation is a population with a center and then many tentacles of subpopulations that expand out. And you in Napa, there's colonies up in the North Bay that are associated ultimately with our metapopulation. There's populations that goes out to the Delta, down to the South Bay. So we're focusing here in the center of the bay, looking at these trends over a period of time when we really did have access. But our colleagues and our what's the best word? Colleagues and our co-contributors continue to fly aerials over the colony. And here on the left, you can see what a colony would look like. And this is also one of the difficult things to love about a cormorant is that their guano burns vegetation and kills trees. And they can ruin habitat for egrets and herons. And especially in areas of the central Midwest, they become pestivorous by decimating islands. And that's one of the issues over time. I think everything here is clear. Let's move on to the next slide, please.
And I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about, this is all the data that we collected.
Right. So this is the, we had to draw the line somewhere, like where does the North Bay end and where does the San Francisco Bay metapopulation end and the Monterey population or the central or the north coast population. So as you can see, it's a scatter shot around the area, but really, I think the most important thing is to know that they started on 28 in the middle of the Pacific there at the Farallones. And then when the bridges were made in the early, well, the San Rafael Richmond Bridge was built in 54 and the San Francisco Bay Bridge was built in 36. That allowed some of the brave new world cormorants to prospect and move into the bay and begin to establish a beachhead that we speculate was the genesis for these other interior colonies. The shore, the outer coast colonies probably were always there in some measure. But you see there's about 31 different colonies here to consider. Many of them are small. The biggest ones are the bridges, and some of them are getting bigger, like the salt ponds in the south. Next, please. It's not only the opportunity to nest in a predator-free, safe environment. These bridges, from a bird's eye point of view, you couldn't ask for anything better. But they are high off the water, and that presents a problem for the young ones at fledging. But it's also right smack in the middle of the food source, so they'd have less to fly, less metabolic investment in commuting. For example, the Farallon birds have to fly into the Drake's Estero for food. They're not pelagic in the sense that they're not foraging with the brands and the pelagic cormorants in salt water. Basically, cormorants prefer estuarine environments, so they're flying in. But why not live right over your food source? And as Meredith showed that picture, as San Francisco Bay has been invaded by many different species, so has the cormorant found success in taking advantage of the new food sources. Next, please. So again, I started in 1988 when Caltrans, Exxon and Chevron were building a pipeline into the bay, and they needed to do a study to see if they were going to pollute the bay as other polluters in the central Great Lakes have polluted and created toxic effects on cormorant embryos. You might be interested, back in the day when we had film I lowered my camera down and I had a pneumatic release. So I lowered that in front of them and took their picture, and they were quite shocked. But you get a sense of what their world is like, and it's not a clear photo, but there on the right, there are some blobs. They love these cool architecture of the Richmond Bridge. So we've studied them. To be like cormorant, to study them, you have to sort of be like one. So next, please. We, in the early days, would get out on the Richmond Bridge before traffic started on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. when people were sleeping in. Look on the left, look how little those cars are. Cute little Toyotas. Cars were not as fast in those days. They were little, and one could have a relatively confidence that people would stay in their lane because they weren't texting. So we closed the fast lane, and then we would close the slow lane, and we would get out of there by 8:30, and then the traffic would pick up. But we had to be like Caltrans workers, and I think the next couple of slides prove that. Oh, well, here's, we were all younger then. In order to be like a Caltrans worker, we had to dress, we had to wear all of our OSHA gear, and I would say Meredith and I have had unique experiences. Here we are under the bridge on what is called a traveler, which is a rolling platform that the painters use, where they lay upside down, they paint the undercarriage of the bridge. And as you can see on the left, there's a little net so that you don't inadvertently roll off the traveler. And we would scoot along underneath the bridge and try to get close to cormorants to count their nests. And also at this time, we were doing a disturbance, see how close we could get to them without them freaking out and being disturbed. Next. So there's Meredith. There's an OSHA violation there. She's supposed to be hooked onto the railing. So we should say something about the bridge. It is a filthy, dirty, cold, vibrating, ugly experience to work on the bridge. It's always freezing cold, and the bridge is always humming, vibrating, and jostling with all the trucks going by. And it's covered with exhaust. In some cases, we would also find cartridge bullet shells, trillions of cigarette butts. It's a crazy place. But in hindsight, it was a fascinating experience for the time. Incidentally, I would not do it again now. We would have Caltrans cover our backs. That's a water protector truck. In the back are plastic bladders for impact. If somebody wasn't paying attention, drifted into the lane, hopefully they'd hit that compactor and the shock would be absorbed by the water bladders and the truck would not jump forward and run us down. On the left, we also climbed to the very tippy top end of the old Bay Bridge, and just because it was there, we went. But you see the gentleman there, oh, there I am, and that was me on the left when I first started, and that's me on the right. Not really, that's my friend. But we've all been through a lot of changes, and there you can kind of see a little nest in the corner. So the big deal is, next slide, please. We're always trying to avoid being roadkill. And again, as I mentioned, after this talk, you'll never go over the Bay Bridge again without looking for dead cormorants or thinking about us. Cormorants that are young and they try to return to the undercarriage often overshoot. And I reckon about every year there's 10 birds that are hit by traffic, and you'll see them on the side of the lower deck of the Richmond Bridge. And I'm also now seeing them on the new Bay Bridge. I think I have a couple more slides. Okay, so here's our friend Harry, and he's really getting down because under that grating, below there is the cormorant world. And so let's look at the next slide. When you look underneath there, these birds are looking up like, what are you doing here? I thought this was my bridge. This is, they look at us like we're some kind of demigods. At least that's what I'm thinking. But it turns out that this H rail, where the birds on the right are, is a perfect place to put your nest. It's a 4-inch wall, and you can build your nest within striking distance of your neighbor. And so you can we can just walk along there, peer over, and every 4 feet, there'll be a new nest, and we get our special prodder, bump the bird off, count the birds, and then come back the next week and see how much it's grown or how many eggs were ejected. And we were able to do that for 2 seasons. I think I did that in 88, 89, 91. And I think, Meredith, you came on in like 2000
yeah.
for our second. And that's when Meredith joined this team. Next, please.
Okay, so I'll take it. So yeah, so Mark did a great job of kind of explaining how we did surveys from the roadway of the bridge. So another aspect of this work is doing surveys from underneath the bridge in a boat. So you can imagine, 3 of us at least in a boat with one person driving the boat, thankfully keeping us safe. We're looking up with binoculars at these different girders and structures that are underneath the roadway where the birds are nesting. So the challenge is to try to figure out how many nests you can see from the water. So in this picture, you can see there's 2 nests right there in front. These are nice, huge nests. They've built them up over the season. There's one there in the back on the right. So there's at least 3 nests in this picture. And so the idea is we kind of go by section of the bridge, try to look up as the boat kind of transits and tries to get us a viewpoint of these different structures so we can try to get an idea how many nests are there. In this picture, you can clearly see 3 nests, but, there's a good chance that, tucked in on the side on the left there, there's probably a nest in there. You might just see, like, for instance, in this picture, you can clearly see some birds sitting on nests, nesting material kind of sticking out or hanging down, and a bird's tail or head sticking out. So that's a nest, sure. But there's also some, some like questionable nests. You might just see a little bit of material hanging down. It's maybe kind of a dark corner of the structure you can't really see. So it's a real challenge, like trying to count these nests. And basically what Mark, Eric and I would do is we'd each count a section, and then we kind of take an average of our counts, because inevitably someone is kind of overestimating, maybe someone's being like really conservative in their count. So yeah, really challenging trying to count on a moving vessel while you're bobbing up and down. But sometimes we did see some nests out in the open. This, I believe, is a picture of cormorants nesting on the old Bay Bridge structure. This was taken from the new bridge, the new Bay Bridge that has the walkway that you can walk to Treasure Island. And so we used to have these really good views of the old bridge after some of that structure had been taken down. But yeah, there was some existing space. The cormorants would like to use it. Of course, these are urban birds, and they're finding garbage and all kinds of things in the environment. So we'd often see things like this, or birds carrying plastic to their nesting site. Plastic is better for nesting material than eating it, I suppose. This is a picture that we took, I think this was in 2000, when we could do the roadway surveys and kind of look down into nests and see what nest contents were like. And so here you can see there's like a balloon and some ribbon. I think there's a condom in there. There's, different, plastic strings and stuff. So yeah, just a reminder of our impacts on these birds that are trying to nest and trying to raise their young in this really, as Mark put it, very loud, dirty environment. So you probably all remember the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake that broke the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge. So you can see that section that fell. That was actually pretty much the core of the double-crested cormorant colony, was pretty much right there. And Mark likes to say that it wasn't the cormorant's fault that the bridge fell down. But yeah, you can imagine, like, underneath that roadway, that's where a lot of the cormorants on this bridge nested. And they kind of like going both east and west of there, the nesting density kind of got less and less. So yeah, that was pretty much that. Of course, this event is what led to the construction of the new Bay Bridge, which was started in 2002. Of course, this project went way over budget and took a really long time. But yeah, under construction for 12 years, which I don't know what they originally, I don't know if you remember, Mark, what they originally said it would take.
Well, I looked that up. Let me interrupt you. I looked that up because of the fascinating figures. Originally, Schwarzenegger, as you remember, Gray Davis was removed from office, like they're trying to do with Newsom. And Schwarzenegger came in and he shepherded us. It was going to be $1.3 billion, and it was going to be done by 2004. It ended up $6.4 billion, and it was 12 years later.
So a bit over what what they'd planned. So yeah, this picture here on the left kind of shows the what they envisioned, and I mean, it pretty much looks like that. Kind of a more open roadway, and no real suspension. You know, nothing overhead. Basically, a very open roadway, and underneath, which we'll see in a few more slides. Underneath is where the cormorant platforms are going to be put, and where they will eventually end up nesting. But yeah, over the years, we began, you know, as we did these surveys, we tried to do at least one survey every, you know, June, I think, early June. We tried to time it so that we could, you know, hopefully catch like the peak nesting period of the cormorants. But each year, you know, the bridge is being built up more and more. Of course, there were concerns with us with like the pile driving that was happening, and whether that was going to be, you know, too noisy or disruptive for the cormorants. But what we found actually is the construction really didn't impact the nesting behavior that much. I mean, this is a figure showing, you know, the peak nest count in each year of both the bridges. You can see that line there when construction began in 2002. You know, the nesting activity remained pretty high. You know, over the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge had over 700 nests on it for several years. But then it dropped that down in 2009 or so. But we think that that was a prey availability issue. And that's because several other seabird species in the region were kind of suffering at that time as well, especially Brandt's cormorants. And there was a known northern anchovy shortage during that time. So in the end, it didn't really impact the nesting activity on the bridges that much, which is interesting. Okay, so Mark, I think you're up.
Okay, Debbie had a question about wing flapping and such. The cormorant is a diving bird. Maybe we should have mentioned a little bit about its biology. It's a submarine hunter using its feet as propellers. And so it has, in order to be able to submerge quickly and stay, it has no oil on its feathers, so it doesn't trap air like a duck does and has to fight against buoyancy. So it submerges. And so the wing flapping is to try to get the water out of the body, and then they hang their wings to dry, spread eagle, so to speak, as they dry their plumage because it's not waterproof, and they become hypothermic. So that's how they're so characteristic. I had the unique experience to convert all of my years of cormorant intuitions and observations, and Caltrans realized that, and it's very enlightened of them, that they needed to replace the lost habitat ostensibly to keep in compliance with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And in other words, the lawyers signed off on it. And so observing what we were working with, which was a cement bridge, smooth, landmark style, no marring or no flaw on the outside, we had to put these platforms on the inside. The angle is like a 26-degree interior angle, so we had to have platforms that stood out. And because cormorants are social animals, we made the design such that they would take cues off of each other. So on the interior, visualize this, on the north and southbound lanes of the new Bay Bridge, about not quite mid-span, there are two shelves on the inner left, that would be the east side or the south side, and two shelves on the north side that accumulate to be 7,000 square feet of stainless steel grid work. And then the genius, if I do say so myself, was to put a roosting rail that the birds can come in and land on and scout out, hey, what's going on with the Joneses? And now they can begin. But it was such a fun thing to say, well, how big are these birds? What's their wingspan? Like Debbie, what's their wingspan? It was about 36 inches ago. And these engineers are going, okay, and they, okay, then you need to have it this long. So it was fun to work with engineers who took bird metamorphics and turned it into engineering drawings. And so that was designed in 2001. As a matter of fact, I have a very memorable experience about driving over the Bay Bridge to meet the engineers the day after 9/11. And the city was empty. And I went into the city and met with these designers. It was, the bridge was empty, everything was empty. It was really a spooky feeling. And then we were, going there to discuss cormorants. So a little bit of a reality check. Next, please. So when you make something in a design, that doesn't mean it's going to be built, right? So it took a few years. And so I was expecting that the cormorant platforms would be bolted onto the bridge at the last minute. But lo and behold, in 2004, we were going, I think, under the bridge. I think the next slide here may indicate that, hallelujah, they built them prefabbed up in wherever they were prefabbed. I think it was up like in Vallejo, and barged these prefab sections down, hoisted them into place with the cormorant platforms already in view. This view gives you the scale of how many there are for 7,000 feet. And those, what looks like holes in the bridge are not holes. They are mirrors. So now we begin to welcome. Well, and Meredith and I were talking about this. When they first put the cormorant platforms up, they were afraid the birds were going to move right in. And so they covered them with chicken wire. Next, please. And like, lo and behold, they were actually putting them up, the chicken wire up, just to prematurely keep the birds out. But the roosting rails were available if the birds wanted to roost. And I think that was, let me check my notes. Okay, the cormorant platforms are up by 2007. Next, please. They sat open for a number of years, and Caltrans was getting a little concerned because they weren't being adopted. So in 2013, Meredith and I and a couple other cormorant biologists were huddling about what we can do. So the idea was, let's implement what is now a standard protocol for social facilitation of attracting seabirds to colonies: sound, decoys, and mirrors. So we put the mirrors, we got decoys. They're not making double-crested decoys, so we got great cormorant decoys, and the sound systems. And I think the next slide also shows that we have some Christmas wreaths as artificial nests. So here we are in 2014. Where are the cormorants? Okay, here we are with the sound system, the dummy, the fake nests, and the mirrors. Looking nice and clean. Not adopted in 15. Not adopted in 16. So even the decoys were getting a little antsy. Like, where is everybody? now around 2014, the old digs, the favorite habitat, was being dismantled. The new bridge was already completed. Traffic was flowing, but the old bridge was next to go, and the cormorants still had not moved over. Next, please.
And so at that point, actually, this is the next year in 2015. Caltrans put up these, which we'll show in a minute, these like this matting material to try to keep the cormorants out of areas where they're going to be doing maintenance. So here's a picture showing some of this, what it looked like, and yeah, similar exclusion techniques were also employed on the Bay Bridge in the following year in 2016. So here's some more pictures. So again, these are just designed to keep the cormorants out of areas where they had planned to do some maintenance work. And this is really, impressive, just showing the extent of this. And, this is basically the core of the colony right here. Again, on the eastern end of the bridge, Mark had mentioned earlier that cormorants don't want to nest too far off the water because that first jump by the fledgling is pretty tough. So yeah, and also the Richmond Bridge on this eastern end is where the Castro Rocks area is, where fledglings can get out of the water and be fed by their parents. So yeah, basically 2015 and 16, the Richmond Bridge was basically off limits to cormorants. And as the old Bay Bridge was being deconstructed, they did manage to take nests of cormorants that they came across and took them to the International Bird Rescue in Cordelia, where they were raised, so, and taken care of. So hopefully, not everything is a loss for them. So they got a little bit of coverage for this. And it is not easy to raise cormorants, as anybody knows, dealing with birds, especially baby birds. You have to be very careful that they don't imprint on you. So there was great effort taken to make decoys and to dress in this costume so the birds don't recognize you as a person. Not too many of them made it, actually. So out of the 26 eggs that were brought there, only 5 of them hatched and 3 of them survived to be let go, and 6 chicks were collected on the bridge and 3 ended up being released. Cheryl Reynolds, who is the volunteer coordinator there, had some great photos that she shared with us of the cormorants pipping out of the eggs. Here's a nice close-up of a little baby one. So that white thing on the top of their bill is an egg tooth. It's like a hardened structure that they can use to crack out of the egg. So of course they grow up and they get really fuzzy. And the down is really soft. This one's ready to eat. I should also mention that not just cormorants were collected on the Bay Bridge, but western gull, I think a few western gull nests and some pigeon guillemots. That's what's shown here. So baby pigeon guillemots were also collected. They like to nest in the little like drainage structures that were on the old bridge. So yeah, so great great effort was taken to try to give these birds a chance with the deconstruction of the bridge. And Mark, I think you're up.
The cormorant is, as we've kind of indicated, maligned, and up the largest colony on the West Coast is surprisingly not the Bay Area, but it's the Columbia River Delta, and up to 20,000 nesting pairs were up there. And recently they've been in the news because the Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service wants to eliminate, at one point, 10,000 of them because they're competing or thought to compete for salmon by stealing the smolts that are coming out of hatcheries. And you saw that earlier photo of the trout being eaten. When you take a hatchery fish, it's an experience, and you put it into a wild situation, they don't really quite know how to avoid predators, and so you're kind of asking for predation. But in other words, there's been a lot of work on cormorants in Oregon, and that's what these bands indicate. And so we down on our way are starting to see, we're starting to see cormorant bands. I should also mention that we didn't ban birds. It was too dangerous to work from a bridge. And the Farallon biologists have stopped banding because the colony at Main Top is very difficult to access. So really there's no banding going on in the Bay Area. So if you see a bird with a band, it's not from here. And so what that shows is the metapopulation of the cormorant extends all the way to Oregon and Washington, and who knows, maybe all the way down to Mexico to Canada. So, you know, it's a giant colony. But we expected more to be cormorants showing up. I think next slide is good to show. Oh, there's a new slide we put in here. We expect some of the,
Yeah, sorry.
we're wondering if we're going to see birds from Oregon coming in. We wish we had a smooth line, but the basic news, folks, is that the cormorant populations peaked in around 2004. And since then, and they've been, look at the bridges have been going down, the North Bay going down, outer coast kind of going up with a slight decline. South Bay is where the cormorants really have flourished, really in the more recent years. Farallons are going down, and the total Bay Area, that looks pretty neutral. But the South Bay is where the cormorants are kind of focusing. And as Meredith showed you, they're not welcome on the Richmond Bridge, and the Bay Bridge was disappearing. Other areas have their own issues. I'm not sure what's going on in the North Bay, but let's see the next slide. So I thought we were going to get more Oregon birds, and that's what you see there, that loaded up jewelry on that, bling there on that cormorant in the center. So I mentioned at the beginning that Meredith and I are volunteers going out, and we were able to get data when we could get data. So when we had the boat, we used the boat. This is a photo when the Old Bay Bridge was still up, and we were able to see them, because as the Old Bay Bridge was being torn down, the birds slowly moved east. And then that section would be torn down and they'd move east. So they weren't adopting the new bridge, they just kept moving east. And incidentally, or coincidentally, that brought them closer to the New Bay Bridge for observation. So for a year there, they were like, you could never have a view inside of a cormorant colony for the general public as sweet as you could in 2016. Next, please. I'm not sure we're going to show this movie today, but you might want to get this on the web. This is the story of the Columbia River. And this is several years old, and the issue still continues. Let's eliminate cormorants as a competitor without really the data that shows that they are a competitor. Let's, get rid of the sea lions because they're a competitor. So we're not, without doing a holistic ecological assessment of the Columbia River basin ecology, let's just pick on the cormorants. So that may sound biased, but it is really not the way to go. Next, please. And here we are watching the cormorants move south or east, I'm sorry, as the new Bay Bridge is up and running. The cormorants are on the old Bay Bridge, and much to the frustration of the local media, who were very much into slamming the cost overruns on the new Bay Bridge, the cormorants were now coming onto the crosshairs of the local Filmatier, San Francisco Chronicle, etc. Next, please. So finally, the bridge is gone. And it took this final removal of the bridge for the cormorants to decide they had no choice but to take new digs on the new bridge. I mean, do you move unless you absolutely have to? No. Cormorants are like us. Is this you next, Meredith?
I'm coming up
Okay.
close here, yeah.
Other way.
I'll let you know. I think
Other
you have
way.
another 3 slides, so.
Okay. So while I'm going to share my screen here for a second, because this is something that came up, and I had to sort of deal with this from Filmatier. So this is what they're putting down out about cormorants. Okay, so I'll cut to the chase. It costs $700,000 to build the cormorant condos, stainless steel. Now, I think this is why the bridge costs $6 billion. They are now saying, now they're saying that $1 million was spent on decoys and recordings and even discarded Christmas wreaths. Spoiler, they didn't work. Okay, so that's not true. I wish I made $1 million by doing that. I did not. $1.6 million requested by the bridge, so to cover the entire cantilever to keep the additional birds away. I can't quantify that money. $12.5 million to speed up destruction to keep the birds away. I don't think that happened. According to Filmatier and Ross, $33 million were spent on cormorant dealing with these intractable birds. I hate to say bullshit, but that ain't true. So this is the problem with a bird that no one really likes. Like, why? Okay. So then this continued on. I try to rebut this, like, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's made up. They were hammering this. What's this date? The 12th. Okay. Cute as a $30 million headache. No. What I like here is this comment. Is it down here? This talks about us and how few birds there really were that merited this money. I guess it's comment. Where is that? Okay. Somebody said it was the bridge, artificial nest bridge construction lobby that wants this money. So again, it's kind of
We didn't see a dime.
no.
Yeah.
And so that I just I'm sorry, it brings up a lot of angst in me. Okay, so go on, Meredith. You can. Did I lose the screen? There we go. What's the next slide, please? Okay. You can see the high-tech nature of the colony in this view. You can only see it if you're in a boat. And if you're in a commuter bus, you might be able to see it. Next, please. We kind of went over this. This is the how one has to stagger these like bookshelves on the interior of the bridge. Next, please. Okay, is this me? Is this you?
This is me.
Okay.
So finally, in April of 2017, 2 cormorants were seen on using the new platforms. So finally, we're getting some use.
So Meredith, let me interrupt you. On April the 12th, Phil Matier going, what a waste of money. No cormorants. What a waste of money. And then what was that last date? April the
That was the
2nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, by this point, the old bridge is completely gone. Finally, cormorants are like, okay, let's check it out. 15 days later, there are 40 more on the bridge. April 24th, about 500 are now occupying the space. You can see them there. Even the decoys are laying eggs. I love this picture. I love seeing how the cormorants are kind of tucked in beneath the roadway. I don't think anybody driving on that bridge thinks that there's birds nesting below them. But so by late June, 388 nests had been built on the bridge. And the wreaths, the Christmas wreaths that had been put out to kind of mimic a nest, they were being used. The cormorants like to look at themselves in the mirror. Yeah, so success, I think. Urban survivors, for sure. They finally figured out that those platforms were for them. And we were super happy. And even by August, a Brandt's cormorant had been nesting there. I wonder if they're, I don't know, I mean, we haven't gotten an update from Caltrans or anybody, but it'd be nice to know if there were more of those sightings.
I never looked at this, Meredith. That looks like there's a chick underneath that bird.
I know, it does look like that.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So what's next? I think this is you again, Mark.
This is a sculpture at Lake Merritt. So what's next is to use money from the Costco Busan oil spill to build more platforms on the defunct portion of the Berkeley Pier that goes a half mile out into the center of the bay. You can see Alcatraz out there. We had this, because we would go by this all the time, we said, why don't cormorants nest here? Well, it wasn't any room. And so in 2004, we had the idea, why can't they be out here? Pigeon guillemots are here. We have Forster's terns and Western gulls here. They could kind of find a little hidey hole there, but cormorants could not. So the idea in 2004, let's make this proposal. Okay, next, please. In 2007, the Costco Busan runs into the Bay Bridge, rips a big hole, creates an oil spill. There's a damage assessment for $3 million. Now we can afford to build. So that was that 09? Or I think it was 07, 09. Okay, so a couple 4 years after ideas hatched, now we have a funding source. Okay, just last year we've the project has moved up the chain, and if you can kind of see here in the center, there are 2 platforms proposed, one at the far end and one in the center. One in the center will be for roosting shorebirds that were damaged by the oil spill, and the far end for seabirds, cormorants, gulls, guillemots, terns. So this is now waiting. We're waiting for the city of Berkeley to allow us to do this, because the city of Berkeley is now entertaining proposal of building a high-speed water taxi into San Francisco and putting it down here at the end. And they don't want to have any bird interference in the planning process. So the design is made. And all we're waiting now is city approval to begin construction of about 8,000 square feet of two fake islands. And there you see the cormorants are roosting. That will be decked over, and we'll have a cormorant colony there. And I bet dollars to donut it will be Brand's cormorants, because that's what is out there. So picture that decked over with 5,000 square feet of graded material, like based on the design of the successful bridge platforms. Next, please. Hey, we made it.
Hey.
So thanks all of our assistants and our colleagues, our co-contributors, co-conspirers, especially Caltrans for access to the bridge, and Eric and Gonda Associates for the boat, and of course our associations with our colleagues, both current and former, at Point Blue Conservation Science since 1988, and International Bird Rescue for salvaging eggs and chicks when they can. And thank you for your attention and for inviting us. We're really happy to be here. We've incidentally gone around the bay, and we were waiting to be invited by you guys. I think that will probably complete all of the Audubon societies in the bay. So thank you very much, and we'll be happy to answer anybody's questions. Are there any in the chat? Let's check.
Tom, are you monitoring the chat at all?
Cormorants are good flyers. No, they're once they get up and going, 2-pound bird, they're good. They fly from the Farallones. Well, they fly from Oregon to San Fran. They do get around.
So
I've seen them fly when I took the ferry to work every day. I used to see them fly, and they would be going the same speed. They could catch up to the ferry. The ferry has a top speed of 38 knots. These birds, they're fast, flying low over the water.
You get them going in flocks together. They're heading toward I don't know how they know that there's a feeding school down ahead, but they do get they get trucking right above and then they can actually go high and catch some different winds. They are, the pelican is these are pelicaniforms. They're strong flyers. They may have a hard time getting off the water if they're carrying a food load, but they can get up. Jennifer asked, how do cormorants migrate? They do migrate from the colder areas and the interior, where, if the water's frozen, they're going to move out to the coasts. Especially in interior North America, they do migrate south. And when they do migrate south, they can cause problems for the mariculture catfish folks in the south.
Lucas and I have been on a number of times out at Point Reyes where there have been feeding frenzies of pelicans and just thousands of cormorants. Would those cormorants come from the Bay Area, or is that more of the Farallon population or the Point Reyes population?
They're probably the Russ Island population. It's a big colony up there. Also the Farallon colonies. Again, who knows how birds communicate food sources? But I've seen they do this sort of snaking thing as a herding, where they are all bloop bloop, and they're driving fish underwater. And in some cases, in shallow water, they drive them where they can and get them. But I guess you're getting a kind of a lassoing, what's the best word, herding fish. But yeah, in dense flocks.
I had a question. You said the cormorants feed in the Bay Area. And yet there's a colony out in the Farallon Islands. Does that colony or the birds there fly all the way into the bay to feed and then fly all the way back to the Farallons to take food to their chicks and things like that?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah. So Mark, have you ever seen cormorants you hardly see double-crested cormorants in a pelagic trip.
No, just really just right near the shore and in the bay for the most part.
Hmm.
So like
Yeah.
if you take off out of Bodega Bay, they're in the bay. It's the dominant species in the bay. But once you clear the corner, it's predominantly Brandt's cormorants.
Yeah, that's a good point. Who was that asked that? Russ? Because in the early days, the Farallons were the only cormorant, and I think and Meredith, I'm speculating. Maybe you can help me out here. When in the early days, when there was abundance of anchovies, maybe they didn't have to come all the way in. Maybe they would hit anchovies in these immense flocks that made Cannery Row so famous. But the whole system is altered, and so I think what I'm getting at is they only existed at the Farallons and at Land's End when like Mark Twain was here. And then the Land's End colony was extirpated and they only existed at the Farallon. So, then they were able to come back in. This is
That colony, the Farallons has stayed pretty constant, right? I mean, like we didn't show that in today's talk, but that colony hasn't changed a whole lot like over time. It's more like the South Bay colonies, like we saw in that one picture, and other Bay Area colonies have really grown. And then maybe in the last, 15 years or so, they've kind of declined a little bit, but
they're only allowed
Yeah.
200 pairs. Yeah. So
yeah, that's right.
So is the 30,000 breeding pairs that you mentioned, is that the Bay Area or is that all of
no, the Bay Area has I don't know, 4,000 pairs most.
Wow.
That was kind of West Coast or
West Coast.
Western population.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That it seems small.
Yes, it does seem small.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And most of them are up in Oregon. There's a substantial colony in the Gulf of Mexico around Arizona. I forget the name of that island. About 2,000. One of the largest single colonies down there in the using the upper head of the Gulf.
Okay.
But most of them are in the Columbia River.
Okay.
So
So I know at Point Reyes, there's a colony of common murres that are probably close to 15,000 at the outer point near the lighthouse. And there's lots of cormorants mixed in or nearby. I'm not sure if that's just roosting, probably just roosting. I don't know if they're breeding right there as well.
they double crests or Brandt's?
I guess out there, well, I think there's some double-crested too, but they may be predominantly Brandt's. I think you're right.
No, I was just out there, and the murres are expanding, and I did see Brandt's on like Chimney Rocks. I didn't see any
Yes.
double crests.
Yes.
The colony is a little further up from that overlook where they.
There's definitely a lot of double-crested at Chimney Rock. So that's where sort of, I think there's more double-crested than Brandt's at Chimney Rock. Although I don't know, in the rocks way out at the point, there may be more Brandt's. But in by what we call fish stocks, in by the ranger's residence, there's a lot of double-crested.
In shallower water, yeah.
Right.
I have a question.
Please.
Mark and Meredith, first of all, I want to say thank you for your scientific studies, whatever observations that you've been doing. I find it really interesting learning more about the cormorant. And I'll be frank, I'm I'm kind of new with the Audubon group, but not with my interest in birds. And I'm speaking from Vacaville. And the question I have for you, because I worked for years in Oakland, and I lived here in Vacaville, you know, since the 80s, you know, and I don't longer work there. But one thing that I need to ask you is when they were building the Bay Bridge, um, and the cameras, what you indicated there, they were already nesting, roosting for, I guess, before the Bay Bridge was built there. I don't know, or when the old one was built. When they were building the new one, is there any Audubon evidence or indication from any group that shows that those birds migrated maybe to Lake Merritt? And I'm asking you about Lake Merritt because I've seen old pictures of Lake Merritt from the Oakland Public Library, where I used to work again for decades. And I can tell you, I am astounded when I see those old pictures of the turn of the beginning of the 20th century. They are thousands of them. But when you go to Lake Merritt now, you hardly see any birds. You're lucky to see a cormorant. You know, I don't live there anymore, but I do go there occasionally, and I love Lake Merritt. But my question is: there any indication that you know, they made up? And I'm asking you that because the city that I'm at, and I'm not sure you're familiar with Lagoon Valley Lake here in between Fairfield and
Uh-huh.
Vacaville. I've always thought that Lake Merritt was, and I suggested to the city that they use it as a prototype to help the birds, you know, that we already had here. But unfortunately, the government doesn't move in the same direction always as the scientists move, and it's frustrating because I love like Lagoon Valley. I like Lake Merritt, and also, you know, the cormorants, the birds that I've learned from the not only from the Audubon group that I'm a member now, but also from the rescue International Bird Rescue Group that I volunteer. So if there's any information you can share, you know, and if you're around this area in Vacaville, I'll be happy to go with you and show you, because the city here is very determined to get rid of all those birds, and they did it before. They did it 3 years ago, 4 years ago. They got this nonprofit group from the East Coast, and they got rid of 100 birds. Some domestics, the people dumped at Lagoon Valley. Some that were, you know, just roosting there. All kinds of birds. They're wild birds, and you know, they want them out of the way. Period. And the
All
city
birds.
has,
They want all birds like geese and such, ducks and.
yeah, pretty much. I think they would rather have them out of there so they can come up with 1,300 homes
Oh
that
yeah.
we've been fighting for 20 years. The
Well.
Friends of Lagoon Valley
So
and the Lagoon
Roberto,
Valley.
that's thank you so much for your observation, because in the earliest literature, Lake Merritt is listed as one of the big colonies. So I'm really going to go down to the library and try to find those photos you mentioned. I have
They're
not seen
there.
them,
You'll
and I
find
wish we
them.
had them for our paper. But when the bridge was starting to get disturbance, I did think we were seeing more birds come over to Lake Merritt, which is sort of a subcolony. I mean, it's what, 2 miles away. So I think it's a subcolony. And unfortunately, they did kill the birds, as Robin was mentioning on Sherman Island. I'm not birds, the trees. The guanos killed their nesting trees, so they kind of ruined their home. So, but for many years, we were counting there was almost 150 nests there in the early days until the trees fell down. But I'm going to go look at that. So you said that's at the library, Oakland Library.
Yeah, or even check with the Oakland Museum. The Oakland Museum. I'm sure there's got to be photos somewhere around there. But I
Okay.
saw I do. I'm not sure if it was from the Lake Merritt group there that informs the public about the bird life and the
Yeah.
natural scenery of Lake Merritt. You know,
Rotary Center.
but I'm sure it's changed because of all the urbanization. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
artificial canals, and I don't know what else they built there
Mm.
to make the city possible. Thank you.
Hey, Mark, there was a question from Robert Martin on the chat, and he wanted to know about the eye structure. If you could relay anything about the eyes of the cormorants.
Yeah, except that they're gorgeous, turquoise with sapphire carbuncles. No, I don't know anything about it.
They have to have some pretty good vision though to be able to see, 100 feet below the surface.
Yeah, in murky water.
Yeah.
But this
Yeah.
is their theme. They have yellow gular pouch, but when they open their mouth is turquoise inside. And if you see one in full breeding plumage, it is. I used to say it's like a tufted puffin on acid. But I guess you had to be there in the early days because they have these white plumes and electric blue mouths and orange faces, and then these eyes that can come out, and they're blue on blue, and then their feathers are like sable. They're just knockout birds. And they hold that only for, I don't know what, a month at most before they get down to the domestic life and they lose all that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I took photos of a double-crested cormorant once, and I was shocked at how blue the eyes were. And it's like when you observe them in the field most of the year, their eyes aren't that color. So it's pretty interesting.
I should give a plug. These pins were made by the Ontario Cormorant people as a fundraiser to prevent what Roberta was mentioning, depredation of cormorants in the Great Lakes. And he was trying to have a fundraiser to fight the inevitable pressures to limit perceived competition with fishermen.
Hey, Mark, when we did the breeding bird atlas for Solano County, I went out with John Kelly to look at the egrets, but we also spotted the cormorants out there in Wheeler and, those other islands out there. There were a lot, and the trees were down. I remember flying with Dr. Cogswell over the marsh, the Suisun Marsh, and taking a look at these colonies of birds. But I'm wondering if I don't know how many birds nested before, but, we're seeing a lot of osprey nesting now, and it's increasing by a lot. And I think it's because they can see the fish, because before the gold rush, or the waters around Mare Island was 40 feet deep, so they couldn't see anything. But I'm wondering if the cormorants also taking advantage of that, because when it's a low tide, it goes out about a mile, and so you can imagine the fluctuation. So they got more fish to get. But I don't know about the herring. Yeah, the herring colonies. The herring schools have.
Yeah, herring spawnings. That's a good observation. That I know we haven't studied the food as much as we probably should have. So we didn't do diet analysis to know exactly what they're eating. But they seem to be foraging on shallow waters. And anecdotally, they're known to, in Sausalito, start to prey on the humming toadfish. So when they are, the people in the houseboats hear the humming toadfish, the cormorants are not far behind. So,
interesting.
They must be happy.
That's funny. Well, Mark and Meredith, I want to thank you very much for just a very fascinating talk. I knew they were having to stop work on the bridge because of the cormorants, but I didn't know that there were a couple of people up there too with their cameras at the same time. You've done some really astounding work, and it's a joy to see people putting in as many hours as you have on a bird that's really absolutely a gorgeous bird. and an attribute to the Bay Area for sure.
Thank you. I'm glad everyone now is a cormorant lover.
Right.
Yeah.
And we had a nice group of folks here. We had over 40 people that were enjoying the talk. So appreciate very much the time that you've spent, and we'll keep in touch with you folks.
Thank
And,
you so much, folks. Really, and I'm going to go out on your redwood pelagic trip in September.
Oh yeah, that's great. Out of our ROS. Yes. So folks, don't forget to read the newsletter and look for the field trips that are coming up in the very near future. And we hope to see you out and about. Thank heavens, many of us have had our first vaccination already, and let's hope we can get almost everyone vaccinated in the next month or two. So that will really help to free things up. So appreciate everyone's participation, and keep up the birding and share your experiences with us. We all learn from each other, and it's a wonderful community of birders in the Bay Area, and a lot of avid birders and a lot of amazing birders are in our real close proximity. So keep it up and share what you see and what you learn. Appreciate it very much. And Mark and Meredith, thank you very much. And
Thank you all.
take care,
Really
folks.
enjoyed being here.
Yeah,
Take care.
Thank you.
Great.
See you out there, Mark.
And we will be posting this video for people that missed it we posted on YouTube, and then we have a link on our website. So you'll be famous before you know it, Mark.
Woohoo.
Yeah. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.